Imagine for a moment you're not a professional soldier. You're a farmer, a potter, a stonemason. Your hands are calloused from work, not from war. Yet, when the horn sounds, you drop your tools, kiss your family goodbye, and take up your spear. This wasn't a job. It was the very essence of being a citizen in ancient Greece. The Hoplite was not some elite warrior class. Every man who had a voice in the assembly, who could cast a vote in the agora, paid for that right not with taxes, but with his body on the line of battle. It was a stark, brutal, but powerful social contract. Your freedom to speak was earned by your willingness to stand and fight. The citizen was the defender, and the defender was the citizen. There was no separation. This idea forged a society where civic duty wasn't an abstract concept, it was a life-or-death reality, a responsibility etched not in law books but in bronze and blood. Now, how did this ordinary man transform into a warrior? It wasn't through state-sponsored training camps or government-issued gear. War was a personal expense. Each citizen soldier had to commission and purchase his own equipment, his panoply. This was a significant financial burden, a testament to his commitment. Imagine the pride and the weight of that investment. The process of assembling this gear was a ritual in itself. First, the greaves bronze plates molded to protect the shins. Then, the cuirass, a sculpted bronze breastplate and backplate, sometimes made of layered linen and glue, designed to stop a spear thrust. And finally, the most iconic piece of all, the Corinthian helmet. Forged from a single sheet of bronze, it was a beautiful and terrifying piece of craftsmanship. But putting it on changed everything. The world narrowed. Your peripheral vision was gone. Hearing was muffled, reduced to the breathing of the man next to you and the pounding of your own heart. In that moment of enclosure, you ceased to be just a farmer or a craftsman. You were reborn. You became a component, a single vital piece of a much larger machine. At the heart of this transformation, both literally and figuratively, was the shield, the Aspis. This was no small buckler. It was a massive concave dish of wood and bronze, nearly a meter across and weighing up to 30 pounds. It was so heavy it couldn't be held effectively with just one hand. Instead, the left arm passed through a central strap, the porpax, and the hand gripped a leather cord at the rim, the antilabe. This design meant the shield covered you from chin to knee, but it also meant it extended far to your left, and that was the entire point. The Aspis was not just about self-preservation. Its primary purpose was to protect the man standing to your left. Your own right side, meanwhile, was exposed, covered only by the shield of the man to your right. Think about the profound implication of that. Your survival depended entirely on the steadfastness of your neighbor. His life depended on you. The Aspis wasn't just equipment. It was the soul of the Phalanx. It created a physical and psychological bond, an unbreakable brotherhood of the shield wall. In this system, courage was communal. To stand firm was to protect your friends. To falter or run was not just cowardice, it was the ultimate betrayal, sentencing the man beside you to death. With this armor donned and this brotherhood forged, the hoplites would form up on the battlefield. This was the Phalanx, one of the most terrifying and effective military formations in history. On the field, all individuality vanished. Men stood shoulder to shoulder, locking their shields together to form an unbroken wall of bronze and wood. Behind the first rank stood another, and another, and another, typically 8 ranks deep, but sometimes more. Each man in the front ranks held his dory, a long spear between 7 and 9 feet in length, tipped with a deadly iron leaf-shaped point. The men in the ranks behind held their spears angled upwards, ready to step forward if a man in front fell, and creating a bristling canopy that could deflect incoming arrows. When the Phalanx advanced, it was a single, living organism. It moved to the grim, rhythmic pulse of a flute, the paean, a war chant, rising from hundreds of throats. To see it coming towards you must have been utterly horrifying. A slow, inexorable, grinding wall of shields. The Phalanx was a system designed for attrition, could absorb losses without breaking, as long as the men held their nerve and the ranks remained closed. The battle was often decided not by brilliant tactics, but by which side broke first. The moment a crack appeared, the moment one side's courage failed, and their formation wavered, it was over. The victorious Phalanx would surge forward into the gap, and the contest of strength would devolve into a one-sided slaughter as the fleeing army was cut down from behind. This method of warfare had a profound impact on Greek culture. Since every citizen was a soldier, war was a shared experience that cut across all social classes. The values of the Phalanx, discipline, cohesion, sacrifice for the group, and trust in your neighbor became the core values of the city-state itself. Democracy and the Phalanx grew up together, two sides of the same coin. The idea that you stand equal with your fellow citizens, whether in the voting assembly or the shield wall, was a revolutionary concept. It created a society that valued order and the collective good over individual glory. This is why cowardice was the most shameful crime imaginable. But while Athens built an empire on the shoulders of its citizen soldiers, another more terrifying model was being forged in the heart of the Peloponnese. In Sparta, things were different. The Hoplite was not a citizen who happened to be a soldier. He was a soldier who happened to be a citizen. His life, from the tender age of 7, was dedicated to a single, brutal purpose: perfection in the art of war. The Spartan Phalanx wasn't just a formation. It was a living, breathing machine of pure, professional destruction. Each man was a cog, honed and hardened through the agoge, a relentless training regimen that stripped away individuality and forged an unbreakable bond of collective lethality. They were the apex predators of the Greek world, the undisputed masters of the shield wall. This fundamental difference in philosophy, the free-thinking, democratic Athenian versus the discipline bred for battle, Spartan created a deep and dangerous rivalry. It was a clash of ideologies, a collision of two opposing ways of life, both empowered by the very same military system. The simmering tension between the two great powers of Greece wouldn't just lead to competition. It would set the stage for a catastrophic conflict that would engulf the entire Hellenic world and tear it apart from the inside. That conflict was the Peloponnesian War. For 27 devastating years, the Greek world turned on itself. Brother fought against brother, polis against polis. The very system designed to protect Greek civilization became the instrument of its self-destruction. The fields of Greece, once defended by united hoplites against a foreign invader, now ran red with Greek blood, spilled by Greek hands. In brutal, grinding battles like Mantinea, the hoplite Phalanx, that symbol of civic unity, became a horrific meat grinder. Phalanx crashed into Phalanx in a deadlock of spear points and bronze shields. The sound wasn't of heroic clashes, but the sickening crunch of bone, the tearing of flesh, and the screams of dying men who just yesterday might have been allies. The Brotherhood of the shield wall, the principle of standing shoulder to protect your neighbor, was twisted and perverted as Greek killed Greek for the sake of Athenian ambition or Spartan dominance. The war was a slow, agonizing bleed that exhausted every city-state involved, draining their manpower, their treasuries, and their spirit. It was a tragic, drawn-out lesson that proved the Phalanx could be both the ultimate defender of a civilization and Smuts's, when turned inward, its most efficient destroyer. The dream of a united Hellas died in those bloody fields. After decades of ruinous warfare, with Sparta and Athens exhausted, a new power rose from the ashes to claim the mantle of military supremacy: Thebes. And with Thebes came one of antiquity's most brilliant tactical minds, the general Epaminondas. He was the final master of the old way, the man who would take the hoplite Phalanx to its absolute tactical peak. For generations, the Spartan army was considered invincible, a myth backed by centuries of battlefield dominance. At the Battle of Leuctra in 371 BC, Epaminondas didn't just challenge that myth, he utterly shattered it. Instead of facing the Spartans in a conventional, symmetrical battle line, he did something revolutionary. He radically weighted his left flank, deepening its ranks to an unprecedented 50 men deep. His weaker right flank was ordered to refuse battle, angling away from the enemy. When the two armies met, this massive Theban column, a human battering ram, smashed directly into the elite Spartan right wing. The sheer mass and momentum of the 50 deep formation was unstoppable. It didn't just push the Spartans back. It crushed them, breaking their line and killing their king. It was a knockout blow delivered with stunning precision. Leuctra was the Hoplite system's greatest tactical triumph, a moment of sheer genius, but it was also its swan song. The victory itself highlighted the system's rigidity. A new age was dawning, an age that would demand more flexibility, combined arms, and professional full-time armies, signaling the end of the citizen soldiers era. And so, the Hoplite, the citizen soldier who had defined an age, began to fade. As the independent city-state, the polis he fought to defend, was absorbed into larger kingdoms and empires, his role became obsolete. First came the Macedonians under Philip and Alexander, who adapted the Phalanx into the longer-speared, more complex Sarissa formation. Then came the unstoppable legions of Rome, whose flexibility and divisional tactics made the rigid shield wall look like a relic of a bygone era. The Hoplite was surpassed, replaced, and eventually consigned to history. But his legacy was not forgotten. It was cast in bronze and carved in stone, immortalized in the art, philosophy, and political theory he left behind. The Hoplite embodied a timeless principle that freedom is not free, demands commitment, sacrifice, and the courage to stand for something greater than yourself. In 490 BC, a moment of truth arrived for Athens. A citizen army, untested and raw, stood on the dusty plain of Marathon, staring down the seemingly infinite host of the Persian Empire. This was it. The massive invasion force, the greatest the world had ever seen, was here to extinguish the flickering flame of Athenian democracy. The world held its breath. Conventional wisdom dictated a defensive posture, to hold the line, to wait for the inevitable Persian advance. But the Athenians were not conventional. Against all odds, the Athenian hoplites did not wait. They did something extraordinary, something that would echo through history. They charged. Across the final mile separating them from the invaders, they ran. 10,000 men, a river of bronze and muscle, sprinting under the weight of their shields and spears. Imagine the sound, the pounding feet, the clatter of armor, the roar of 10,000 voices crying out for their homes, their families, their freedom. They crashed into the Persian lines not like a wave, but like a hammer blow. The shock was immense. The Persians, expecting a tentative, fearful enemy, were met with a tidal wave of ferocious energy. The Phalanx, this wall of shields and spears, held firm. It was a brutal, grinding, terrifying affair, but the Athenians, fighting with the desperation of men defending everything they held dear, were unstoppable. Their victory that day was more than just a military triumph. It proved that the Phalanx could defy empires. It proved that free men, citizen soldiers fighting for their own homes, fought with a strength and a fury that no conscripted soldier of a distant king could ever match. The legend of Marathon was born. 10 years later, the Persians returned, this time under a new king, Xerxes, with an army even larger than the first. Greece was in peril once more. But this time, a different kind of hoplite stood ready to meet them. In a narrow coastal pass known as Thermopylae, the Hot Gates, King Leonidas and his 300 Spartans, alongside a few thousand brave allies, prepared to make a stand. This was not a battle for victory in the traditional sense. everyone knew the numbers were impossible. This was a battle for something more. Here, the Phalanx became more than a tactic, became a monument. For 3 days, this small force held back an army of hundreds of thousands. The narrow pass amplified their strength, turning their shield wall into an unbreakable barrier. The Persians threw wave after wave of their best troops, including their elite immortals, against the Greek line, and wave after wave was broken. Leonidas and his men were a living embodiment of Spartan discipline and courage. They fought not for survival, but for time, for the rest of Greece to mobilize. They fought for honor. They fought for eternal glory. In the end, betrayed and surrounded, they fought to the last man. Their sacrifice was not in vain. Thermopylae became a symbol, a rallying cry for all of Greece. It demonstrated that the true strength of the Phalanx was not in its bronze shields or its iron-tipped spears. The true strength was in the unwavering hearts of the men who held the line. Their absolute refusal to yield, even in the face of certain death. They taught the world that some things are worth dying for. The ultimate fate of Greece, however, would not be decided by a single city-state, no matter how brave. The Persian War was won by unity. While the Spartans were making their legendary stand at Thermopylae, the Athenian navy, under the brilliant strategist Themistocles, was preparing for a decisive confrontation at sea. In the narrow straits of Salamis, the smaller, more agile Greek fleet outmaneuvered and decimated the larger Persian navy. This naval victory was crucial. It cut off the Persian army's supply lines and trapped Xerxes' land forces in Greece for the winter. The final act came the following year, in 479 BC, on the fields of Plataea. This was the clash everyone had been waiting for. The combined might of the Greek city-states, Sparta, Athens, Corinth, and their allies assembled the largest hoplite army ever seen. They faced the full remaining strength of the Persian land army. It was a massive, brutal battle, the culmination of decades of conflict. The united phalanxes of Greece, fighting as one, finally shattered the Persian army for good. The victory at Plataea was a triumph of cooperation, showed what was possible when the fiercely independent and often rival Greek cities put aside their differences and fought for a common cause. The citizen soldier had not only defended his home and his city, he had preserved the very idea of the Greek world, its philosophy, its art, its democracy from being swallowed by the Persian Empire. This was their finest hour, a victory for a civilization. In the aftermath of this monumental victory, Athens stepped into the sunlight. As the city with the most powerful navy, it naturally took the lead in forming a new alliance to protect against any future Persian threats. This alliance was called the Delian League. Its purpose was simple: mutual defense. Every member city would contribute ships or money to a common treasury, kept on the sacred island of Delos, to maintain a powerful, united Greek fleet. At first, it was a resounding success. The League cleared the Aegean Sea of pirates and Persian garrisons, bringing security and prosperity to the Greek islands and coastal cities. But power, as it often does, began to corrupt. Athens, as the leader of the League, controlled the treasury and the fleet. Slowly, subtly at first, the dynamic began to shift. Allies who wished to leave the League were forced to stay. Tributes became mandatory. The treasury was moved from Delos to Athens itself, and the funds were used not just for the navy, but to finance the magnificent rebuilding of the Acropolis, including the Parthenon. The transformation was complete. The alliance meant for mutual defense had become an Athenian Empire. The hoplite spirit, once a purely defensive ideal of a citizen protecting his home, now powered Athenian ambition across the Aegean. The shield that had once protected democracy was now used to enforce an imperial tribute. The spear that had defended liberty was now pointed at fellow Greeks. The great victor of the Persian Wars had, in its moment of triumph, planted the seeds of its own eventual downfall, setting the stage for a new, devastating conflict, this time between the Greeks themselves.